Okay, welcome, and thanks to the Strategies to Bolster Trust panel. I'm John Kansky. I'm the president and CEO of the Indiana Health Information Exchange, which is the statewide IHIE serving Indiana. We have a carefully curated panel of experts, and in addition to their day jobs, they all have connections to national networks to which trust is a very key factor. And I'm going to allow, when I eventually shut up here in a minute, they're going to have the opportunity to introduce themselves and make some initial comments about, well, anything they want, actually. But presuming they'll have some comments about what the networks they're affiliated with are doing to support and engender trust. Let's see, yeah, I said that already. Okay, so we're going to get to audience Q&A later on, so think about your questions, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. I also wanted to plug the unconference tomorrow at 1 o'clock, also related to trust, if we inspire any great debate here today. So with that, let's go down the line. Have you guys drawn straws to see who goes first?
Apparently I've got the short straws.
Okay,
so
Dr. Eisenberg, kick us off.
Thank you, John. Thanks. So happy to be here. I'm Matt Eisenberg. I'm the Associate Chief Medical Information Officer at Stanford Healthcare. That's my day job. I think for the purposes of this panel, I'm representing the eHealth Exchange, as I currently have the honor of serving as the chair for the coordinating committee, which has nothing to do with getting your dress and your suit right for the events. It's the coordinating committee, is the governance body for the eHealth Exchange. I'll be talking a little bit about the eHealth Exchange. I also have the distinct pleasure and privilege of working with John Blair as co-chairs for the TEFCA Transitional Governance Council, but I'll let John talk more about TEFCA.
Did you have a slide we were going to?
I do have a slide. If you have a slide, I can talk a little bit about trust. Now, we haven't talked about trust at all in the last few months, have we?
Oh, no, it's completely off the radar.
I'll start, actually, a couple things about the eHealth Exchange. So I'm a disciple of Mickey. I don't know if Mickey's still here. I'm a disciple. There you are. Everybody knows the Health Information Exchange moves at the speed of trust. And we have talked a lot about trust and transparency yesterday, today, last week, and we'll continue to do so. I'll make two sort of observations, and then I'll talk about what the eHealth Exchange is specifically doing. And really, I think all of us here feel strongly that building in trust and transparency by design is what we're all about. And I think that's the message I'd like to keep everybody, is that we're all really working on that together. That's been the case for all of the early designated QHINs, and I think that's happening across multiple networks. I will reflect, thank you. We can control our own destiny. We were talking about trust, and I'm reflecting that not only does IHIE move in the speed of trust, but trust takes time. I remember when I first was involved with Epic as an implementer and got involved in the Epic Care Everywhere network. And we remember those early days. Sure do. And we had to read the trust agreement, which was a one-pager, rules of the road. It was specifically a lot about treatment, what was excluded. And nobody trusted it then. Everybody had point of care consents everywhere we went. Everything was all manual. And it took us a long time to move to proactive consents and automated exchange for treatment as soon as the patient arrived at any site. That took a long time. And then when Stanford joined the eHealth Exchange in 2014, I had to write a 45-page white paper on the DRSA because they had to understand the data use and reciprocal services agreement. They didn't trust that. They didn't know the difference between a HIPAA breach and a DRSA breach, and I had to get my compliance office to figure that out, and HIM and the whole shebang. Then Carequality came along. Like, well, I got to sign another agreement. Wait a second, how is that going to work? Am I going to build trust? And we've built an enormous amount of trust and transparency over time. TEFCA's new. TEFCA's going to take some time. And I think with that time, we'll build the trust. And I spoke about this yesterday. The eHealth Exchange really has been working really hard on knowing who your exchange partners are. It's for TEFCA, we've been talking about the vetting process, but who do you represent? Who are your participants, your sub-participants, your delegates? What do they do? And we've actually already baked that into our new onboarding application process. There's some educational materials. And for existing participants, we're asking them to review that, and if there have been any changes or updates on their annual review, to go over that. We want to bake that detail into the directory we share so we actually know technically who are those people? Who are we exchanging with? And we also want to know why, of course. We have a variety of permitted purposes and use cases supported by the eHealth Exchange. But we are also just recently put in what we call Operating Procedure 17, which is building it into the actual transaction, into the message. And then the last two things we've done, which is critical, I think, is you have to measure, you have to monitor. You have to look to see if the people you think you're exchanging with are exactly what's happening. Is it happening in a pattern that you expect? Putting the R back in DRSA is the reciprocity idea. For treating providers, I expect to see the patient, I'll send it to my colleagues at Sutter, and when they come back to see us, we see it, and I'll be able to measure whether that actually is a balanced bidirectional sharing. Is there a whole bunch of data that just moved all of a sudden? If so, why? Can I explain that? Was there a bulk query that I wasn't expecting? How is that working? And then finally, with the help of the staff, we've put all of these in place, and we're working with all of our participants to say, if you have concerns, if you have questions, what I now say, if you see something, say something. Please tell us. So we're working with our community to do that. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can I borrow your notes? I mean, I feel like I could use them almost verbatim for some of the things that I'm thinking about. My name is Seth Selkow. I work at Kaiser Permanente. I've led our organization for interoperability, helped us retool on our pulp health capabilities and operational processes. And over the last couple of years, I've been focused on our artificial intelligence governance and re-platforming for how we're going to do that. And it strikes me that across these domains and what is really in focus under this banner of trust are two things: who and what. So who is querying you? What are they doing? Similarly, I've been involved since we stood up some of the original exchange with Healthy Way, eHealth. And at that point in time, it was a couple of organizations. Over the last decade, we've reached this point where we're doing 1 billion transactions a month. That's a big number. It's bigger than McDonald's, I think, if you were to maybe fact check it. That's continuing. And even today, we have requests and interest in joining Carequality, even as TEFCA is really starting to launch. And so we're contemplating a couple of things around the who and the what. On the who, it's understanding who is participating and what business processes they represent. On the what, it's what they're doing with the data that they're seeking and how they want to use that. And so we can unpack that and talk about directory, we can talk about onboarding, we can talk about how we want to refine and openly and transparently help govern and lift up the large community of interoperable agents and actors with the best foot forward, thinking through no bad actors, but people trying to get things done and trying to support their business processes. So when I think about unpacking treatment and I think about the purpose of uses that we have, I think we tend to ask the question, is that sufficient for the granularity that we're seeing as the industry and as interoperability has grown by orders of magnitude? So those are some of the things that are on my mind as chair of the board for Carequality, Inc., and wish to have a continued conversation about these topics.
Did you want to speak to your slide, or?
Oh, I forgot to show my slide. I'm sorry. So this is my slide, and it basically I hope translates or supports what I was just talking about. And thanks, Matt.
Okay, I didn't do my job,
I
obviously.
appreciate it. I distracted you with the notes.
I gave you
You
my
had
paper,
one
but I
job,
didn't do your
Matt.
slide. Is there another slide? Or?
I don't know. That's later.
That's later. Okay.
Later.
Okay.
More slides later.
We've been practicing.
All right, my turn. Hi, everybody. I'm Marilee Benson. I'm president and co-founder of Zen Healthcare IT. We are an interoperability platform company, members of the Carequality Advisory Council. But we're interesting because we are an implementer. We're also technology that powers other implementers. We're validated technology on eHealth Exchange. We just recently became members of Commonwealth Alliance, becoming a service adopter. So we work across many networks and support our customers accessing many networks. And I feel like I'm kind of representing those, primarily the Carequality implementers in the room who maybe are not EMR tethered, who are also enabling a lot of innovative companies to have access to the networks that are bringing innovative solutions to providers. And I feel like the wonderful panel that we had this morning talking about what is treatment, I feel like you guys must have been bugging my Zoom calls, because this is the world that I spend a lot of time in, trying to educate people, trying to explain these nuances. And I'll just be upfront, I am a big fan of this whole concept of aligning with TEFCA, because I really need one set of business rules to manage and communicate and educate people on. So more about that later.
Okay, great. John Blair, I'm with MedAllies. And as I think about, I mean, we support several national networks, direct secure messaging. We're a Carequality implementer and also a designated QN. And I think about this trust theme, and I go back to my days in practice, and when we were faxing between providers or communicating, that was pretty easy. It was much easier. Then I think about my IPA days when I was the head of a 5,000 provider IPA in Eastern New York, and I think about the medical council angst that we had in terms of communicating, because back then we were realizing the importance of coordination of care, and that was a problem. The just primary care providers trusting specialists and others to start to send digitized information back and forth, the problem was there. And then I fast forward up to direct secure messaging. Now that's a national network, much larger scale, but again, it's one provider sending to another, and it's much easier to feel comfortable in that situation. Then you go to where we were with becoming a Carequality implementer, and then also moving to TEFCA. You're now taking not just one provider to another, but you've now taken the ability to have this come from all over the country and to automate it for rapid response, and now you don't have a clue where some of this is going. So trust goes up exponentially in terms of its importance, and I'm also on the Carequality Steering Committee, and we know about some of the problems that have occurred in terms of disputes and trust and that kind of thing. And so I saw the impact of that this last year, and then I've been heads down in TEFCA on the governance side. Matt mentioned that we co-chair the Governance Council, and in addition to that, there's a policy and technical advisory group that meets, and there's been a tremendous amount of work on this. The vetting all comes out of the impetus of that was a trust getting at that. So, the point I'm making is now we're in the middle of, and I think TEFCA has done a heck of a good job. I mean, there are probably people that are outside of this to look at this last SOP and, why'd you do it this way, and could be critical, but a lot of thought went into it. And I think that we'll see. If it wasn't that good, we'll iterate and fix it. But this was to address that, and I do have to applaud and thank those that were part of this over the last 2 months and, hundreds of hours, Matt?
Oh my God, and three in-person meetings, and yeah, a lot of meetings. I think people are tired of my voice for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point is, it's a real issue for even other reasons, but for what I just outlined. And, we've put this now in place, and I think it's a good step forward. I think it was Steve Posnick the other day that said, well, you've now done vetting for required treatment. Now we're going to have to figure that out for the others, and this was the easiest we'll ever have. So it's going to be even tougher. But anyway, that's enough said about that. Looking forward to this conversation.
I just want to say again a big thank you, Catherine, Zoe, Alan, Aaron from the RCE, who really helped us with our Transitional Governance Council meetings, all of the in-person meetings through the PTAG meetings. Incredible effort, and can we give them a round of applause? They've been amazing.
Matt, since you have the power, if you would take us to our last slide real quick. This isn't particularly brilliant. I get the blame for this one. This actually, listening to conversations about trust, and I was actually in a meeting this morning, and I don't know if this resonates with anybody in the room or the panel, or if you guys want to argue about it later, but it just seems to me that there's all kinds of helpful, useful movement of data that we're trying to achieve, but we have to have policies and practices to ensure appropriate, nice typo, John, appropriate movement of data. And those things have to overlap, and we have to have not all the trust in the world and not all the security safeguards in the world, because then those things won't overlap at all, but we need enough. It's just, I'm pondering, given you referenced some of the burden of that's going to be necessary and prudent, we have to make sure that we don't pull those two Venn diagrams so far apart that we can't exchange. Okay, so with that, I've got a few questions to bounce off the panel, and then depending on how much time we have left, we'll go to the audience. And the first thing I wanted to ask is, and you guys referenced it, given TEFCA, Carequality, eHealth Exchange have made responsive and reactive changes to policies and procedures aimed at bolstering trust. We've as you guys referenced, participant vetting, tightening up participant eligibility, narrowing definitions. So the question is, have we already taken national interoperability in the right direction, and have we gone far enough? Does anyone have an opinion on that one?
Yes and no.
Yes to the first one, no to the second.
Yeah. I don't know if you want. Have we gone far? This is going to continue to evolve. Yeah. And as technology automates and the speed, goes faster and faster, and more come in, there's going to need to be continued effort to, I'll use the word vet, but whatever, to allow different entities to connect to these networks. And then I heard something earlier in another meeting talking about ongoing oversight. I think that'll come in later too. But I think if you've done a terrific job up front, making sure that it's a trustworthy and appropriate entity connecting, you've knocked off a lot of it. But even as good as we get at this, some are going to slip through. So you're going to have to continue with oversight. So yeah, I think it's going to continue. This will always continue.
Agree.
Yeah, I think that we're just starting. This is a tremendous foundation that we can now start to build on. And that's why I am an advocate for implementers in the room you don't have to wait for Carequality to go through our governance changes. Just adopt the TEFCA guidance as business rules and begin exercising them, because we are going to need to evolve this. We need to iterate over these business rules and find out what is really working, what is scaling, what isn't scaling, who are we leaving out of exchange that really needs to be part of exchange. We need to get that feedback to the QHINs, to the ASTP, ONC, RCE, so that we can continue to get better, because at the end of the day, it is about finding that balance. We need to continue to build trust, but trust comes from a lot of different perspectives. If I'm a patient, like Anna from this morning, who desperately needs better access to my data, if I'm seeing a narrowing or tightening of the ability to do data exchange, then maybe you lose their trust. So I think trust comes in a lot of different forms, and we need to iterate, we need to exercise these SOPs as part of a network that is doing 1 billion clinical documents now of exchange. So I think that volume is really going to help us iterate faster.
To me, some of the policy changes or practice changes or tightening up of things felt like a bit of a course correction, that we all collectively got reminded how important and necessary trust is to support this exchange, and maybe some of these things we could have, should have been doing all along. Any comments, reaction?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that we think there was a little bit of, I wouldn't say complacency. We'd been doing this for a long time. I thought everything was just marching along, beautifully. So the eHealth Exchange has a hub dashboard. I can see as a participant what my volumes are. My vendor supports that as well. I look at those periodically. But I think this was a message to go back and look at that more. That was a big message for us through the course of this year. I think that knowing your exchange partners as a provider group is really important. I think for our QHINs and for other groups, knowing who you're working with, what they do, what their business is, that's really important, particularly as we've said before, have new entrants into this single on-ramp interoperability. We still have a lot to do, John, right? The governance is just getting started. The caucuses are going to get set up in January. We'll have our QHIN caucus. We'll have our participant, sub-participant caucus. We're getting, voted off the island for now, and then we'll see what happens, but there'll be permanent governance next year. It's coming. We have new use cases that we're rolling out that we're going to have to learn through example. We have new QHINs. And if you've seen one QHIN, you've seen one QHIN, because they're all different. They all have different issues and different direction, strategy. I think that if we can continue the type of collaboration we've had with the original QHINs and our new QHINs, then we're on strong footing. Because I think we're learning from each other by doing, and then we can take that information and plug it into TEFCA.
Yeah, thinking about your two questions, are we going the right direction? Well, the exchange volumes indicate yes. The numbers and types of actors indicate yes. As I mentioned, Carequality is huge volume. TEFCA is launching like a rocket, so that looks good. Are we going the right direction and doing the right things? So just by the fact that we're having these discussions and thinking through what is the granularity for purpose of use and what are the policy sets that support that, so that different things that need to get accomplished across industry have the correct avenue in order to be achieved is important. And I think that that's a big part of where we need to go. Are we going to be done soon? Well, absolutely not. I've heard the term artificial intelligence referenced many times just today and yesterday as well. And I think that it's a signal that there are always going to be rapid changes that come forth that we'll also have to evolve towards and understand how to adapt towards. And so with that in mind, one of the things I think on many people's minds are when we start to talk about governance and think through how to make that transparent and understandable, how far does that go through to the consumers and what is that going to look like? And I believe that that is a focal point for what we have to talk about and what we have to do as we continue our evolution.
I would add just two more comments. I mean, I think we're looking to scale individual access services, and I mentioned yesterday, I think identity management is going to be a big focus this year for all of us, and 2026 is a big year for all of our payers. So there's a lot going on as we move there. We at the eHealth Exchange meetings yesterday were delighted to have a lot of discussion with our payers about integration and getting in now, not waiting for 2 weeks before January of 2026. and options for that. So those use cases are coming. We got a lot of work to do. I think we are moving, the volumes are increasing. We're getting more people on TEFCA every day. I said it last week. You know, if you remember the old Dr. Pepper song, I'm a TEFCA, you're a TEFCA, that's basically my version of it. I think we're seeing that happen. I think we are moving in the right direction, but time will tell.
So as you pointed out, a lot of these things are changing quickly. We're not just adding processes related to trust, but we're adding use cases and other processes. And there's different networks, and out there's organizations that are compelled to participate in multiple networks. Can you comment on the burden that creates on participants or sub-participants, people in the chain that it's impossible to bring newness and additional necessary and prudent processes without creating some burden. We have to have some balance to that. Is it manageable for organizations participating in multiple networks?
I'll take it for a second.
Should I ask easier questions?
No?
Well, so, right now there are a plethora, and there's going to be a burden trying to participate in several of these. The way I see it is you've got your traditional health information exchanges, regional and statewide. I don't see that going away. So there's that connectivity. Then you have the national networks. I mentioned direct secure messaging, which is a push, which is really even though you can do push under TEFCA, it's pretty well instantiated, and I think that will continue. And that's pretty well OEM'd into systems. But then you look at Commonwealth, eHealth Exchange, and then the Carequality implementers. That's where you start seeing all these networks. Where you could collapse this down. And my prediction is if we do this right, and there's not a dramatic change in the future, that those networks will move over to TEFCA. We already know that Commonwealth is a QN, eHealth Exchange is a QN, some of the Carequality implementers are QNs. I think that will all shift over. So in my mind, you're going to have the query-based national networks, TEFCA, QNs, direct secure messaging, and traditional HIEs, regional, statewide. And I think so I don't think you're going to get to just one connection for everything, but I do think that some of this nest will thin out.
So, we will continue to support and participate in the health exchange. It's our way to get our SSA disability connectivity, which has been remarkably successful for us. We've done it for almost 10 years now. I think I mentioned, well over 100,000 submitted electronic claims over the last 9 years. I think we run about 800 a month. VA DoD connectivity through the eHealth Exchange is really important for us. Regional, our statewide, we only have 7 HIEs in the state of California, but I can connect to all of them through the eHealth Exchange. Plus, they provide incredible technical support. Carequality for us was really a last mile for small practices in our region. That's been really important. Until they're on TEFCA, I can't replace that. I don't know if we will, and when we do, maybe, but for now, that's really important. So we're participating in all of these, and as the need changes and as the participation grows, we'll have to make those determinations.
Yeah, not directly related to the topic of trust, but getting in a public service announcement from a perspective of a statewide health information exchange, we have a saying at IHIE, and not or. There's a lot of very sophisticated people in this room that all understand data interoperability. I know we've all talked to people who don't necessarily understand it at the sophisticated level that we do, and they are hoping for that. Just tell me the one place I need to connect to get everything I need, and it's like, it's and, not or.
Right. Well, if I only had one banking app, it'd be great, but I got a couple.
Thank you very much. Any comments before we go to audience questions? We got about 13 minutes left.
I'll just comment
Please.
on that. I absolutely agree. There are thousands of reasons why healthcare data needs to move from point A to point B. You know, point-to-point interfaces aren't going away, right? So there's so many use cases where data needs to move. Our approach is to be agnostic and support our customers to use the organizations and the networks that fit their use cases best. But I also, again, just to come back to this concept of alignment, I'm thrilled to hear, you know, at meetings going on this week that, you know, eHealth Exchange yesterday was talking about aligning with TEFCA. Liz was sending out emails about aligning with TEFCA specific to under Carequality, it's called OBO. Under TEFCA, it's delegation of authority, and aligning the business process for that. And that is really, and that's why this alignment is so important, because where there are networks where we have these common elements, having a single set of business roles is really going to help everyone throughout the whole stakeholder universe, because even at the provider level, if you're answering the same questions consistently from network to network, all of a sudden it's just easy to remember, it makes sense. And talking to so many people about this process, it has been really hard to explain and have these conversations, or especially around the gray areas of use cases, when I couldn't point to something in writing, you know, here's 3 pathways. Let's talk about which one you fit in. It is making those conversations much easier. And I think there's concern about would there be pushback, and I'm sure there will be in certain in certain situations, but I also think people are appreciating that level of detail, and so I'm excited.
Yes, I think that's a really important point. If I'm going to sit out here and say that we have to help our participants understand they're probably going to need to participate in multiple networks, the burden's upon us to work with each other, with government, to try to make it as easy as possible and align as much as we can.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of come back to the question, which is a question of burden, which I think of as a synonym for effort. And of course, there's going to be more burden and effort. The number of things that we're trying to do is increasing. And when I think about how things have evolved, it's an analogy I might come back to again at another point. Initial highways might have been 2 lanes, and maybe there's a stripe in the middle, and you trust that the oncoming traffic is going to stay in their lane and you're going to be in your lane. And as traffic increases, what do? You engineer the road differently, and that takes a lot of effort. You put in a divider, you put in better striping, you standardize the fonts on the signs, and you have guardrails. And ultimately what guardrails do is they allow us to go faster because we're confident in how we're going to operate and the things that we're going to be able to get done.
Thank you. Audience questions? Oh, yes. Oh, not you. Oh, okay, Nicole. Oh, well, who's got a microphone for Nicole?
Mic runners are coming to the rescue.
Lady in the adorable Christmas sweater.
Well,
who I've never met before in my life.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicole Sweeney. I'm with Crisp Shared Services. So something has been I call it itchy brain syndrome sometimes, when something's in my brain and I don't know what it is. And you all helped me articulate it, so thank you. But also you all helped me articulate it, so now I'm going to ask you, so I apologize. And to me, as we've been talking about trust, my itchy brain syndrome, I figured out what it is, and it is that trust is contextual, right? And you can't talk about trust in a vacuum. And how much trust you give to whom is different depending on the circumstances. So I was wondering if you can help me articulate, when we talk about trust, the question I wrote down for myself is, trust of what, between whom, to what end?
Well, I work in IT, and so we operate with zero trust, which feels like a complete contradiction around what we're trying to accomplish. But I do come back to the notion of who and what, and I think that you just said it, which is, do we have the fine-grained understanding of who's operating and what are they trying to get accomplished? And trust gets established when we have the avenues in order to support a finer granularity across the things that we're trying to do.
I just looked up the definition only because I thought that was easy. So trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. I can just say that we were on a lot of PTAG meetings with the QHINs and the participants talking specifically about required treatment and what is, what isn't. You heard this morning, it's not so easy. But through a lot of conversation, a lot of sharing, a lot of mutual understanding, a lot of questions and answers, we came to some resolution. And again, that's one step in the trust journey. That's why I said this is gonna take some time. And as new QHINs come and new players come in, it's gonna take more time. But I think that was the feeling that I got from those meetings. I was actually really quite excited about that collaboration and that ability to build trust. Trust does take time. It does take that understanding. I think that's the best answer I can give.
Well, in terms of the who and the what, I think the what is patient's health information, their personal health information. And the what is who's getting a hold of it. And I mean, the who is who's getting a hold of it. So the steward of it or who's releasing it wants to know that that health information is going to the person or the kind or the entity that they are okay with it going to.
And again, monitoring helps you figure out no surprises. This is happening the way I expect it. And if the data suggests something's amiss, let me ask some questions. And I think that's really helpful.
Other audience questions?
Oh, now I'm afraid.
Well, they're kind of like that, though. They're going to bring you one.
It's like a game show here.
Come on down.
Where's Kurt?
You're going come on down. So Michael Marchant, Sutter Health. So
who are you? Where are you from?
Sutter Health.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things, going back to Seth's analogy about roadways, is that today we have one giant superhighway that is treatment, and everyone's in that superhighway participating. And I'd be interested in the panel's perspective. Are there current participants in exchange today in our superhighway that should be in a different lane? So let's just take an example, like our ACO example from earlier this morning. Should an insurance company be able to participate in the treatment lane, or should they actually have their own lane, whether you call it payment or operations or something else? And so when you're narrowing the definition, should we be looking at it as who are the actors? So the traditional data exchange is, I'm a provider, I think I'm exchanging data with another provider, I'm going to open the trust to allow for that to happen. Do you think as we move forward with TEFCA, org type should be just as important for who's participating in what lane as we build those lanes forward so that not everything is treatment? And then that trust of, I'm in a lane with only providers and this is what I can exchange. Is that some kind of, you look at the organizations participating, talk to me about what you think or where do you think that concept might go?
Well, I have a question, I suppose. It might be a rhetorical question, but was everyone fully aligned this morning in the exercise we did on the game show that should be called from here on forth? Is it a treatment use case?
Well,
and if the answer is no, then how do you become comfortable with guessing what is behind curtain number 3?
Yeah, I'm going to actually go a little different. So let's assume that it's all figured out. Let's assume there really are different pieces. Are you saying that technically you have different lanes because that's then different networks, right? Or are you saying policy-wise and the way you handle who goes on those technical lanes are different? So right now treatment's got wheels and they can roll down there and let's say operations is a sled that goes through the snow, you got to put some wheels on it. So are you asking from a technical standpoint, different lanes, or from just how you craft the policy around who uses them?
It's more policy, because in the metadata you can identify what organizations participate in. The idea, though, is that today everybody's identifying themselves as a treatment organization, and I think as we build operational policies to support those other use cases, shouldn't we be allowed to identify who we would want to exchange with until such time as it becomes required?
Yeah,
Well, I think the economics of it will help drive it. So do you need a whole other superhighway for a vehicle that looks kind of like the first vehicle? Is that financially viable? Is that where the cost is? Or is it understanding through that metadata whether the right work has been done to disambiguate those different objectives that organizations and actors have? And I might be bold to say that I would think that leveraging a single highway or being able to transact across highways, but understanding what they're trying to do through metadata. But it's a technical, in my mind, it's a technical question, whereas I think what's at stake is understanding operationally what actors are trying to do and understanding whether we can support them.
And it's impossible for me not to think about the traditional HIE, the regional HIEs that we operate, and so often the use case that you're trying to enable is for different type organizations to be able to exchange public health to providers, payers to providers. So I think it will evolve. We're just about out of time, but I want to give the panel a chance to give any 15-second, if you have a chance to leave them with your last soundbite. Any final shots?
Again, I think the alignment that we're starting to see is really healthy for our community. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody's commitment to that, and I think that helps me feel like we are in fact moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe easy to predict what I might say, who and what.
I was out front looking at the big list of implementers, the Carequality board with all the implementers, and I was looking across all the names, and I was like, there's a number of these people I have not met, I have not engaged with, and so my message to implementers in Carequality is now is a wonderful time to get engaged. Get engaged with Carequality, get engaged in these conversations, get to know some QHINs, because I think that's going to be really, really valuable to let your voice be heard and to be a part of this process and these conversations.
So I would just say if we're allowed to continue as we are, this last year there's been a lot done, and we've run into some bumps, and we knocked them down and got through them. The cooperation has been terrific amongst competitors. Matt brought up the staff. I mean, you guys turn around SOPs at super lightning speed. So anyway, I would just say if we can continue to do what we've done, and Mickey, you've been a large part of it. If we can continue to do that, I've got great hope.
So I'd personally like to thank you guys for sharing your time and knowledge. I don't know if you guys have been on panels, but it's not easy to get up here and be prepared. So thank you very much if you join me.
Thank you for support.